Mr. Speaker, as promised, I am once again humbled to present an economic update to this Parliament, and I am pleased to also witness the enthusiasm demonstrated by my over-busy shadow with the excitement he showed this morning. In addition to some good news for our struggling families, I will present key messages from the 2024 Final Budget Outcome Report, also known as FBO, and also touch on the 2025 budget implementation as promised. Cost of living pressures. Mr. Speaker, regarding our papers over the last few days, I have been filled with joy. As most of you know, feeling joy is not our usual experience with newspaper stories. Monday's the national headline, and I quote, "Prices slashed, relief for consumers on 13 essential items," unquote. The front page goes on, and I quote again, "The prices of 13 essential household items have been slashed by 10%. In Tuesday's Post-Courier, and again in today's, we see the cost of these goods in Port Moresby have dropped from 99 kina to 77 kina, a saving of 22 kina in a family shopping basket. In Lae, the price drop was 11 kina, still substantial. The response from readers also brought joy to most of us in this House, I'm sure. And I quote, "The tax relief is great. It will help the people save some of their money," said one. "I'm happy with the 10% GST cuts because now I can be able to buy basic goods at a much convenient price," said another. Following through on our promises of the 2025 budget of no more GST, unfortunately, the GST cuts were not immediately passed on in Mount Hagen, Kokopo, Gorobuka, but we will be reasonable with businesses as they adjust to these new realities. But let me be clear. We will use the resources of the IRC and ICCC to ensure that all of the GST cuts are passed on throughout all of our country. The Marape Rosso government is a caring government. PNG's economic recovery is continuing. Mr. Speaker, 2024 was pretty tough. Opening with the 10 January riots, global uncertainty with wars in Europe and the Middle East, violence here at home at unacceptable levels, and the most disruptive, unproductive, and costly votes of no confidence in PNG's history. Yet underlying domestic growth remains strong, with forecasts continuing to suggest historically high improvements, averaging over 4.5% real growth in our non-resource economy from 2021 to 2025. Yesterday, I was pleased to see an article in Business Advantage asking the question, is Papua New Guinea's forex crisis finally drawing to an end? While I will want to double-check the accuracy of all data, reports from ANZ and Westpac are that sometimes foreign exchange orders are being filled the same day, and for the Bank of South Pacific, generally within a week. As most of us know, foreign exchange shortages have been identified as the greatest barrier to growth in our country for 8 of the last 10 years. A home goal created by poor decisions back in 2014. The Marape Rosso government, our government, tackled this problem with historic Central Banking Act reforms, a new team at BPNG, and IMF support. Finally, there may be a light at the end of this tunnel with all the improvements this could bring to growth and investments. Ongoing budget repair, the 2024 FBO. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to table the 2024 final budget outcome today as promised. There are several key messages from this year's FBO. First, as we all know, 2024 was a tough year for the budget. This is most clearly set out in the table on page B in the forward of the document. If I could ask members to try and find that. That's about 6 pages in. Starting from the second row in the forward page, we had a shortfall in tax revenue of 248 million kina and an even larger shortfall in non-tax revenues of 1,295 million kina. Overall, our government's revenues down by 1,543 million kina. In addition, we had major wage overruns in the costs of teachers and health workers' salaries, totaling 737 million kina. But of course, the good news is we've been able to engage more teachers and more health workers. Combined, we need to find 2,280 million kina in cuts or deferrals in other areas of the budget to stay within our budget repair strategy of reducing the 2024 budget deficit to under 3,984 million kina. Through some or much hard work and tough judgment calls, these cuts and deferrals had to be made. Most of these cuts and deferrals, some 1,225 million kina, were in the operational budget. Cuts and deferrals were also required in our public investment program of 893 million kina, as well as the drawdown of concessional loans. The second message is that the Marape Rosso government kept to its 13-year budget repair plan. The 2024 budget deficit outcome of 3,931 million kina is 53 million kina lower than the 2024 budget estimate. That's good news. This represents a reduction in our budget deficit from 8.9% of GDP during the global COVID-19 crisis back in 2020, down to an outcome of 3.2% for 2024 last year. Very strong fiscal discipline demonstrated by our government over the last 5 years. One of the benefits of remaining on budget ratio continues to fall from 52.6% back in 2021 and now down to 49.5% in 2024. The third key message is that despite the revenue shortfalls and the continuation of our budget repair strategy, together we delivered 94.2% of the GOPNG budget. I have already talked about the major increases in funding for teachers and health workers. Our government of Papua New Guinea capital budget is still over 3 times higher than 2018 levels, to put into context our performance today. The fourth key message, and this is more technical but important, is looking at Table 17 on page 20. If I could ask our members to move to that part of the report, Table 17 on page 20, is that we had a net domestic financing shortfall of nearly 2 billion kina. This is the gap between the 2,320 million budget estimate and the 231 million outcome. The tightening of monetary policy by the central bank, increasing interest rates, in the second half of 2024 had very major impacts on our domestic banks. I am pleased that they have been unwinding some of these pressures in last night's monetary policy statement. In response to this impending shortfall of 2 billion kina, which would have been devastating for our budget, we worked closely with our friends in Australia to replace 3/4 of this domestic financing with additional international financing of over 1.4 billion kina. And we thank Australia for this continued support, noting they are effectively allowing us to piggyback off their AAA credit rating at little cost to the Australian budget itself. The fifth key message is that this financing shortfall has led to a significant carryover of 2024 expenditures into 2025. This has required us to use some of our 2025 cash to finance reported 2024 expenditures as part of PNG's budget system. As of last week, there remained 300 million kina in 2024 checks still to be paid, and 252 million kina in 2024 provincial functional grants still to be paid. The final key message is that the FBO contains a lot of detailed information. In Parliament last week, I undertook to provide details on 2024 expenditures. So Part 3 of the FBO, starting on page 56, provides 35 pages of detailed information on the 2024 budget. Surprising for some, as we look at the very top line of this table on page 56, we see that provinces overall spent 105.4% of their revised budget. Indeed, if we compare the 2024 budget outcome of provincial expenditure at 6.3 billion kina, we see that there is some 900 million kina higher than the original budget of 5.4 billion kina. So even allowing for the 252 million kina in 2024 functional grants yet to be paid, provinces overall spent well above their actual budget appropriations. And we are sure these provincial funds were well spent by our good governors and all of our good members of Parliament, weren't they? Overall, 2024 was a tough budget year, but not as tough for some as others, and this should be remembered in our parliamentary debates. 2025 budget implementation update. Mr. Speaker, I also undertook to provide more details on 2025 budget implementation. Attached to this statement hopefully now in front of you, I have included 3 key tables. Appendix 1 deals with the operational budget, and Appendix 2 with the capital budget. These tables set out details on budget implementation. So as of 30th of May, we see total 2025 expenditures of 4,001 million kina in the operating budget and 816 million in the capital budget, where we need to work a lot harder. We then need to add 1,021 million in interest costs and 476 million in GST and bookmakers transfers to the province. So the total, as I had tabled in last Wednesday's explanation, is 6,314 million in expenditures this year. In addition, we have paid 2,606 million kina in outstanding 2024 expenditures. So after a slow start, cash is flowing. And as I mentioned last Wednesday, since the 1st of January this year, we've pumped 8,920 million kina cash into the PNG economy. But there remain revenue challenges for this year's, my colleagues, mainly from an unexpected drop in PNG LNG taxes of some 2 billion kina. And so we await MAIFO to see if we may need a 2025 supplementary budget. Until then, given the revenue news, some warrants will need to be held back. Appendix 3 sets out balances in provincial and district bank accounts. These are split into various types of accounts to help provide clarity on cash flexibility at the subnational levels. There is significant balances of cash, of funds of over 3.1 billion kina held in our provinces and districts. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, there is some good economic news this week. The costs of 13 essential household items have gone down, reflecting the Marape-Rossell government's understanding of the cost of living pressures facing our families. There are signs of hope that foreign exchange availability is significantly improving, and we are possibly one step closer to kina convertibility. Despite a tough year in 2024 for revenues and financing, the 2024 FBO demonstrates 94% of the national government budget was delivered. Papua New Guinea remains on track with our budget repair plan. And finally, after a slow start, 2025 budget implementation is well underway. The Marape-Rossell government, year after year, being responsive, being responsible, being reliable. I commend the 2024 FBO to the House.